Welcome back to the 5 p.m. podcast. I'm Dan, your resident political enthusiast, always eager to unpack the latest happenings in the world of politics.
And I'm Tina, here to bring some perspective and, hopefully, make sense of it all. Dan, I've got to say, this week's political landscape is a bit of a head-scratcher.
You're telling me. Episode 51, and we're diving into a real doozy. We've got U.S. governors pushing back against Trump's time unique, time suggestion about a 51st state, but then they're all over the place when it comes to tariffs.
Right? It's like, pick a lane, folks. So Trump suggested Canada should be the 51st state, which, let's be honest, is a bit out there, while Puerto Rico, which has actually voted for statehood multiple times, is seemingly ignored.
Exactly. Puerto Rico has had these referendums, 2012, 2017, 2020, and again in 2024, consistently showing support for statehood. It's non-binding, so Congress is just sitting on it.
It feels like a slap in the face, doesn't it? These are U.S. citizens, but they don't get a vote in presidential elections, and they have limited representation in Congress. It's not exactly all men are created equal in action.
And here's the thing about statehood, it gives representation. Former governor of Puerto Rico, Ricardo Rossello, he made a strong case for it. He talked about it improving quality of life, giving them a real voice.
I saw that interview. He even mentioned how statehood could make Puerto Rico a bridge to Latin America, strategically important for the U.S. It's not just about votes. It's about economic and geopolitical advantages.
So basically what's happening is, you have this clear desire from the people of Puerto Rico, but then political roadblocks in Washington.
And, from what I understand, a big part of that roadblock is the fear that Puerto Rico would lean Democratic, potentially giving them more power in the Senate.
Oh man, this is the cool part. See, it all boils down to political calculations. It's less about what's right for Puerto Rico and more about the power balance in Congress.
Which is incredibly frustrating. Let's shift gears to this tariff issue. Because the governors aren't just disagreeing on Puerto Rico, they're also split on Trump-era tariffs.
This is where it gets really interesting. Think about it this way. You've got agricultural states, heavily reliant on exports, right? They hate times tariffs because it can lead to retaliatory tariffs from other countries, hurting their farmers.
Okay, so states like Iowa or Nebraska, they're going to be anti-tariffs because they want to sell their crops overseas without those extra costs.
Precisely. But then you have states in, say, the Rust Belt, with more manufacturing. They might support times tariffs, thinking it protects their industries from foreign competition.
So it's a classic clash of economic interests. It makes it really hard for the Republican Party to have a unified economic strategy, doesn't it?
It's kind of like, when you're trying to get a group project done, and everyone has different ideas about how to do it, except in this case, it's national economic policy.
A very high-stakes group project. And the thing is, tariffs can have unintended consequences. They might protect some industries, but they can also raise prices for consumers.
I was just reading about this, and it reminds me that it's not always a clear-cut win for either side. There can be so many knock-on effects.
It really makes you question if using states and people as pawns in the quest for political point scoring is the right way to go.
So circling back to Puerto Rico, it's not just a political issue, it's an ethical one. We're talking about the rights of U.S. citizens.
And if you compare their situation to, say, Alaska and Hawaii becoming states, there are some parallels, but also key differences.
Right? Alaska and Hawaii, they had strong public support, and there was a strategic element to their admission during the Cold War. Puerto Rico has the public support, but the political timing. Well, that's another story.
It seems like a lot of this comes down to political will, or lack thereof. And it's a shame, because it impacts real people, their lives, their representation.
And that's what we're all about here at the 5 p.m. podcast, bringing these stories to the forefront for you guys.
Well said, Dan. And with that, we are out of time for today's episode of the 5 p.m. podcast. Join us next time as we continue to unravel the complexities of the political world.